A police officer was walking downtown with his little girl when they stopped at a street corner where a ragged man was holding a sign that read, $5 for the beast. Behind the sign sat an old German shepherd, ribs showing, one ear bent, and scars all over his body. The little girl tugged her father's sleeve and begged, "Please, Daddy, can we save him?" He hesitated, but the moment their eyes met, something inside him broke. This was not just a dog, it was a soul crying for one last chance. What happened after he paid those $5 would uncover a hidden world of cruelty, rescue, and redemption, a journey that would forever change their lives and restore your faith in miracles. What happened next will make you cry and believe in second chances again. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. The summer sun of Montana pressed down on the small town of Clearbrook like a weary hand, warming the red brick storefronts and shimmering against the dusty pavement. It was late afternoon, the kind of golden hour when the air carried both the fatigue of the day and the promise of cooler twilight. A light breeze rattled the tin sign above the old diner, and children's laughter echoed faintly from a park 2 blocks away. Officer Ethan Miller walked slowly along Main Street with his daughter, savoring a rare day off. Ethan was 38, tall, broad-shouldered, with short brown hair touched faintly by early grays at the temples. His gray eyes, often described as calm yet burdened, carried the wear of too many years on the police force. His clean-shaven face showed lines that weren't just age but the residue of a marriage that had ended bitterly 3 years prior. Since then, he had thrown himself into raising his daughter and into work, wearing responsibility like a shield. Beneath his navy polo and worn jeans was a man who looked steady to others, but inside he often wrestled with loneliness. Beside him skipped Sophie Miller, 9 years old, her blonde hair tied into a messy ponytail that bounced as she moved. She had Ethan's gray eyes, but none of his heaviness. Her eyes were bright, filled with the kind of hope only a child can hold. She wore a pale yellow sundress with white sneakers that had already collected dust from summer play. Sophie was curious, talkative, and endlessly compassionate, a trait she had inherited from her late grandmother who had spent her life caring for stray animals. Sophie often reminded Ethan of that woman, his mother, which both warmed him and made him ache. As they walked past the grocery and the shuttered bookstore, Ethan caught sight of a figure sitting hunched at the corner near the bus stop. The man was Harold Boone, or at least that was the name Ethan would later recall from a complaint once filed about public loitering. Harold was a man in his 50s, skin leathery from years outdoors, his beard scraggly and unkempt, streaked with gray. His clothes hung loose-faded plaid shirt, torn jeans, boots with soles half gone. He carried the aura of someone who had slipped through society's cracks long ago. His eyes darted about nervously, and though he looked weary, there was something sly beneath the surface, like a man accustomed to surviving through half-truths. But it wasn't Harold who made Sophie stop in her tracks. Beside him, tethered loosely by a fraying rope, lay an old German shepherd. The dog's coat was sable but dulled with grime, streaked with patches of gray around the muzzle and legs. Its ribs were faintly visible beneath the thinning fur, and one ear bent awkwardly, as if broken long ago and never healed properly. The dog's hind leg trembled when it tried to shift, suggesting an old injury that still haunted its steps. Yet the most striking thing were the eyes, deep, dark brown, glossy with pain but carrying a flicker of life that refused to die. A battered piece of cardboard leaned against Harold's knee, scrawled in black marker, $5 for the beast. Sophie gasped, her small hand instinctively tightening around her father's fingers. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice almost trembling. "Look at him." Ethan's eyes followed hers. He saw a dog that should have been proud and strong, reduced to a shadow of itself. He had seen neglected animals before in his line of work, but something about this one, the quiet dignity even in its suffering, made his chest tighten. Still, Ethan's practical side stirred. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "we don't know this dog. He could be dangerous. and we already have enough to handle at home." But Sophie wasn't listening. She had crouched down, her sundress brushing the sidewalk, and was staring into the shepherd's eyes. The dog lifted its head slightly, meeting her gaze. For a moment, the busy street, the honking cars, the sweltering sun, all of it seemed to fade. In those eyes, Sophie saw not a beast, but a soul pleading for mercy. "Please, Daddy," Sophie begged, looking up at him now, her gray eyes brimming with tears. "He needs us. We can't just leave him here." Ethan hesitated. He looked at Harold Boone, who gave a half smirk. $5, officer. That's all it takes. He ain't worth more than that anyway." The casual cruelty in Harold's tone made Ethan's jaw tighten. He hated the way the man referred to the shepherd as if life could be measured in coins. Ethan pulled his wallet from his back pocket, staring at the bills. He didn't need another mouth to feed, especially not one that might come with vet bills and complications. But Sophie's hand was still clutching his, her voice quivering with urgency. "Daddy, please." Ethan sighed deeply. His daughter rarely begged for anything, and truthfully, the thought of walking away from those brown eyes felt unbearable. "Fine," Ethan muttered, pulling out a $5 bill. "But he's your responsibility, Sophie." Sophie's face lit up, brighter than the sun overhead. She sprang up and threw her arms around Ethan's waist. "Thank you, Daddy. Thank you." He handed the bill to Harold, who snatched it quickly, stuffed it into his pocket, and muttered, "Pleasure doing business." Before Ethan could say another word, Harold slung his backpack over his shoulder and shuffled down the street, disappearing into the crowd with surprising speed. It was as if the moment the money was in his hand he couldn't get away fast enough. Ethan frowned. Something about the man's hurried retreat unsettled him. People usually lingered, but Harold moved like he wanted no part of what came next. Meanwhile, Sophie was kneeling beside the dog, gently stroking its matted fur. "We'll take care of you now," she whispered softly. "You're safe." The shepherd gave a faint, almost imperceptible wag of its tail. Its tongue lolled slightly, and for the first time a fragile sound, half sigh, half whimper, escaped its throat. "What should we call him, Daddy?" Sophie asked, glancing up at Ethan with hope brimming in her voice. Ethan crouched down beside her, studying the dog. The scars across its neck and the limp in its leg spoke of a long, cruel history. He felt an old ache stirring inside him, the same one that often rose when he thought of the people he hadn't been able to save in his career. "We'll think of something," Ethan said gently, running his hand once over the dog's head. The coarse fur prickled against his palm, but beneath it, he felt the faint tremor of life, steady and waiting. Sophie beamed, hugging the dog carefully around its neck. "You're ours now. Don't worry, we're not letting you go." Ethan looked at his daughter, then at the animal, and for a fleeting second he wondered if this choice would change more than just the fate of one battered shepherd. Something about the way the dog looked at Sophie, as if recognizing her, unsettled and comforted him at once. The breeze picked up, carrying the scent of fried food from the diner and the far-off rumble of a train. The evening shadows stretched longer across Main Street. Ethan stood, adjusting his stance, and glanced down the road where Harold Boone had disappeared. The man was gone without a trace, leaving behind only the echo of his cruel sign and the haunting question of why he had parted with the dog so cheaply. For Ethan, a seasoned officer, that detail would not be forgotten. But for Sophie, holding the shepherd's scarred head against her shoulder, none of that mattered. She had saved him. And in that moment, she felt like he had saved her too. The next morning, the sun slid gently over the rooftops of Clearbrook, casting soft light across Ethan's modest backyard. Dew clung to the grass like tiny crystals, and the breeze carried the scent of pine and faint echoes of a world slowly waking. Birds chirped over the fence, and somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower buzzed into life. Ethan stood on the back porch, coffee steaming in his hand, watching his daughter crouched on the patio with a bottle of dog shampoo and a big blue bucket filled with lukewarm water. The shepherd lay quietly beside her, head resting on its front paws, eyes half-lidded but observant. Sophie had been up at sunrise, determined to give their new friend a proper welcome. They had named him Bruno, a name Sophie had chosen after watching an old cartoon the night before. "He's strong like a bear," she'd said, and Ethan had chuckled, though the name did seem to suit the battered old dog surprisingly well. Sophie wore an oversized t-shirt with faded unicorns and bike shorts, her hair tied into twin pigtails, and a pink towel slung over one shoulder. She moved with quiet focus, occasionally glancing at Bruno's face for permission before touching him. He hadn't barked once since arriving, hadn't growled or whimpered, just observed, watched, endured. Ethan set his mug down and joined them in the yard, kneeling beside Sophie. "Need help?" he asked. Sophie nodded without looking up. "Hold his head still while I wash around the eyes. I don't want soap to sting." Bruno didn't resist. He barely moved as Ethan cupped his hands gently around the dog's broad skull. The fur was thicker here, coarser, still matted in places. Sophie squeezed the bottle, and the shampoo foamed across Bruno's back in swirls of white and gray. Then, as her hands worked through the layers of filth, her fingers paused. "Daddy," she said softly, "come look." Ethan leaned closer. Beneath the suds, circling the dog's neck like a ghost collar, was a deep, hairless groove. The skin was puckered, slightly raised, and extended toward the chest where it disappeared beneath thick fur. Sophie touched it gently. "It's a scar," she whispered, like he wore something too tight for a long time. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Or like someone kept him chained," he muttered. As they rinsed and toweled off the rest of Bruno's body, more signs became visible. Thin scars across the ribs, a missing patch of fur near the tail, and, most notably, his back right leg bore the signs of an old fracture. He limped slightly, favoring it each time he shifted position. Sophie frowned, her eyes wet with concern. Who would hurt a dog like this? Ethan didn't answer at first. He ran a hand over Bruno's head, feeling the slight tremble beneath the skin. "Some people," he finally said, "shouldn't be allowed near animals, that's all." "Do you think he was a police dog?" Sophie asked. "Or a soldier's dog?" "Could be," Ethan replied, studying the dog's posture alert but calm, disciplined, even in pain. "He moves like he was trained." Bruno sneezed once, then looked up at Sophie as if he understood every word. She smiled and wrapped her arms gently around his neck, careful not to press too hard against the scar. "He's not just a dog," Sophie whispered. "He's a survivor." Later that afternoon, they sat on the porch together. Ethan reading the newspaper, Sophie drawing pictures of Bruno in her sketchbook. The old shepherd lay sprawled beside her, breathing slow and steady. Every now and then, Sophie would talk to him in a low voice, telling him stories about her school, her favorite ice cream flavor, and about her mom, though that part came quieter. "She left when I was 6, Sophie said, scratching behind Bruno's ear. "It was just a regular day, and she didn't come back. Daddy says it's complicated, but I think she just didn't love me enough." Bruno shifted his head onto her lap. She looked down at him, eyes wide. "But it's okay. I have Daddy, and now I have you." From behind his newspaper, Ethan heard every word, his hands stilling for a moment. He didn't speak, just watched as Bruno thumped his tail faintly against the porch floor. As the sun dipped lower, a sharp barking erupted from across the fence. Rufus, the large black mastiff belonging to their neighbor, lunged at the wooden boards with a deep growl. Rufus was known in the neighborhood for being territorial and unpredictable, especially when unleashed. Sophie startled, her colored pencils scattering. Bruno jerked upright, his ears perked well, one of them, and his gaze locked on the fence. Rufus barked again, snarling, and a thud echoed as he slammed his weight against the boards. Before Ethan could rise, Bruno had moved. The old shepherd pushed himself up, limped down the porch steps, and took a wide stance between Sophie and the direction of the barking. He didn't growl, didn't bark back, just stood firm, body still, tail stiff, as if drawing an invisible line. Sophie remained behind him, holding her breath. Rufus barked one more time, then stopped. Silence fell over the yard. The mastiff slinked away behind the fence. Ethan blinked. Well, I'll be damned. Sophie grinned. He protected me. Bruno turned his head slightly, as if checking Sophie was safe, then slowly lowered himself to the grass with a groan. Ethan approached and knelt beside him. That took guts, he murmured, rubbing the shepherd's chest. You may be old, but you've still got it. That night, as Ethan tucked Sophie into bed, she clutched her stuffed bunny in one arm and whispered, "Can he sleep in my room?" Ethan hesitated. Bruno was old. What if he growled in his sleep? What if he snapped from pain? But then he saw Sophie's eyes hopeful, trusting, and saw the scarred silhouette of the dog curled just outside her door. "All right," he said, "but only if he stays on the rug." Bruno limped into the room as if he'd understood, circled twice beside her bed and collapsed with a sigh. Sophie reached down and brushed his fur. "Good night, Bruno." And for the first time in a long time, the house felt full again. It was just past 2 a.m. in Clearbrook when Ethan awoke to the sound of claws scratching against hardwood. At first, he thought it was the wind stirring through the shutters, but then came the low, guttural growl, deep and unrelenting. Ethan sat up in bed, his hand instinctively reaching for the flashlight on the nightstand. He moved quietly down the hallway, barefoot, past Sophie's closed door. The noise grew louder, scratching, whining, and a sharp, insistent bark. Bruno was in the kitchen, pacing near the back door, his tail stiff, ears alert, the bent one twitching in agitation. His entire body pointed toward something outside, something unseen. The dog's growl grew deeper when Ethan approached. Ethan opened the door, and Bruno surged forward, not with the wobble of an old dog, but with surprising speed and precision. Ethan barely had time to grab his flashlight and jacket before the shepherd disappeared around the side of the house. "Bruno!" he called into the darkness. But the dog didn't stop. Ethan followed, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the night mist that had crept in low and heavy. The air smelled faintly of oil and earth. Crickets fell silent as his boots crunched down the gravel path that led behind the neighborhood's old boundary fence. Bruno's silhouette was visible now and then in the beam, weaving in and out of overgrown brush, pausing only to glance back and make sure Ethan followed. They moved past the abandoned railroad track that split Clearbrook from the old industrial zone, a collection of rusted-out warehouses and condemned storage lots that the town never bothered to demolish. Ethan hadn't been back here in years. Bruno finally stopped in front of a tall chain-link fence partially collapsed under the weight of time. Behind it stood a structure Ethan barely remembered. Lot 16, once a shipping depot, now